Higher education operates in a unique space, serving as both a public good and a competitive enterprise. As a college or university, you're pressured to fulfill your mission, to attract students, secure funding, and to adapt to changing workforce needs, all within an environment of shared governance, which can get pretty complicated. So, as a higher ed professional, you face some unique challenges that can be navigated at least partially through effective strategic planning. My name is Jen Scumaci. I'm a senior facilitator at SMA Strategy. And in this video, I'm going to share with you best practices in strategic planning as a higher ed institution. Consider that your college is almost always experiencing what we call the multiple destination trap. This is when a group of people is stuck or not accomplishing goals or isn't operating efficiently or effectively. And it's usually because everyone has a different idea of what success looks like. When everyone has a different idea of what success looks like, they have different ideas of what to do, what outcomes to drive, or how they participate to make that success happen. Everyone might be working hard and everyone might be busy, but they're not all working toward the same vision of success. This breeds confusion, uncertainty. Progress takes a hit. It increases stress. It increases siloed working, and you waste time and resources. And don't forget, this isn't just about the people who work at your university. This is also about your stakeholders, your students, your community members, your alumni, your funders. They also have their ideas of what success looks like. And when their ideas don't align with what they see happening, it can cause low engagement and dissatisfaction, which ultimately impacts your overall brand in the marketplace. The solution to the multiple destination trap is the one destination model. One destination means you are aligned in a clear vision, mission, shared values and behaviors, strategic priorities, and goals and actions. As a campus leader, consider you're trying to move things forward toward your vision of success, and that some people are moving with you and some people are moving against you or with you, but stopping at some destination just short of yours. And consider that to get out of this multiple destination trap, what you need is a clear strategy that everyone's aligned to. One destination. Now, this doesn't happen overnight, especially not in environments as dynamic as college campuses. It takes intention, careful planning, resource allocation, and a lot of time and energy. So it's important to invest in a tested and proven process and lean into expert facilitators who can lead you through. That's what SME strategy does. Our comprehensive process facilitates stakeholder engagement, strategic planning, and strategy implementation. This is not a sprint, it's a marathon. Anyone can lock themselves in a room for a couple of days and write down a strategic plan. But the only way to ensure everyone buys into your strategic plan is to ensure they're represented in the process. That's what stakeholder engagement is for. And then the only way to ensure your plan will be implemented successfully after you've created it is to get intentional about resourcing the work it will take on the back end. Remember, a 3-year strategic plan is 1,100 days of implementation. So let's take a look at each of these components: stakeholder engagement, strategic planning, and strategy implementation. Let's start with stakeholder engagement. A stakeholder is a person or a group of people who have interest or influence within your college or university. And stakeholder engagement is actively seeking their input and perspectives. And here, this is in specific regards to your strategic planning process. So your stakeholders can be internal, like faculty, staff, students, or they can be external, like funders, local community members, employers, or alumni. Why would you engage stakeholders? Well, because you want to develop a strategic plan that will result in real change and drive real value for your college or university and those you serve. Engagement helps you identify critical issues, opportunities, potential barriers, and this leads to a more effective and impactful strategic plan that people see themselves in. And engagement fosters buy-in and support for your implementation. So the first question to ask is, who is this strategic plan for? Is it for the entire campus, for a campus division, or a particular program or department? Your stakeholder map will look different based on who has interest in and influence within the specific entity you're planning for. So once you determine what that entity is, then you ask what groups hold accountabilities for strategic planning within your governance structure. Groups like student government, other student organizations, faculty or staff unions, campus committees. It's going to be really important to consider every element of your shared governance and check for who already has ownership in strategic planning. Using our stakeholder mapping process, you'll brainstorm all of your stakeholders: students, faculty, staff, alumni, state or federal entities, community members, etc. And then you'll sort them onto a mapping matrix that identifies their various levels of interest and influence. This will help you think through how and how frequently to engage with all of your stakeholders in this process. Once you've got your who mapped out, now it's time to plan for how. So, what activities will you use to collect input from each stakeholder group? Surveys? Will they be paper or electronic? Engagement sessions? Will they be in person or virtual? Town hall meetings? So, figure out what activities are best to engage each group and then determine where and when. Then figure out which resources you are going to need to be able to pull this off. So, the necessary people, money, tools, etc. Consider a timeline for your front end stakeholder engagement that will give you enough time to collect all of the important information you need. If what you design doesn't result in obtaining the breadth and depth of information you were looking for, consider that that doesn't mean your efforts have failed, but really it just means that you're not done yet. If certain activities don't work with certain stakeholder groups, just figure out why and adjust what you need to get the engagement you require, especially with busy college students. Consider that emailing a survey link a couple times just might not get their attention. So you're going to need to meet them where they're at. A lot of things are competing for your stakeholders' focus. So, what can you do to meet everyone where they're at and authentically engage them in this process? Next, think about who will be on your strategic planning committee. Many colleges and universities already have standing groups or committees that are dedicated to steering strategic planning. But if you don't already have a committee, you need to create one. This group will review and synthesize all of your stakeholder inputs along with adding their own perspectives to help create an outcome, a strategic plan that outlines what success looks like for the university. So, as you're considering who should be at the table for this process, think about context or realm of the plan being created. Again, is this for the whole campus? Is it for a campus division or a particular program or department? Consider that you're going to want to have diverse perspectives at the table. A professor in economics will see things differently from your director of student services, who will see things differently from a first year part time commuter student, who will see things differently from a third year residential student. So, which perspectives do you need to have at the table, and how can you have a diversity of perspectives so you have as comprehensive a view as you're creating your plan as possible? Next, ask who are the crucial or critical voices who need be at the table. Who can you simply not afford to not have there? Then think about the commitment you're asking of this committee. There is commitment required in this process to not only the process but also the finished product. So who's going to be able to commit the necessary time, energy, and focus? Consider also that this is an expensive process that requires good time and investment, and you want it done right. So, who do you need on your team who will give you their all and give this process their all and commit to getting it done right? And lastly, and related to that, select team members who can really focus on the collective interest. People who can bring their perspectives and share them in the context of the best interest of the entire college or university. The last thing you want is people coming to the table who are there to position or push their own agendas. This team needs to be clear on its focus, which is creating an overall strategic plan that will positively impact everyone in your campus community. Now that you've identified your strategic planning committee and you've got your stakeholder inputs, it's time to work through an intentional process to design your strategic plan. This is the process we facilitate at SME Strategy, and it focuses on asking and answering 5 key questions together. First, where are we now? Here we look at activities like celebration, a SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and a PESTLE, which is political, economic, social, technological, legal, and environmental. And these three activities help us distinguish what are we doing really well, what are some areas we need to improve, what are the opportunities and threats before us, and what are the environmental trends that we anticipate coming at us either right now or in the next 3 to 5 years. Then we focus on where are we going, and we align to your mission and your vision of success 3 years from now. And we ask and answer the question, if success were a place 3 years from now, how would we know if we got there? And we align around what the successful future looks like, as well as who we need to be within it to be able to get there. Next, we look at what will get in our way. We talk about building a shared set of values and behaviors that help drive you towards your vision. And we discuss those potential behaviors that are limiting your ability to reach your vision. And we identify risks and roadblocks, things that might get in the way on your path towards your one destination. Then we align on what do we need to do. And here we identify three strategic priorities or areas of focus that address or mitigate your biggest risks and help you achieve your aligned vision. And we design smart goals to help move these strategic priorities forward. At this point in the process, in essence, you've got a clear and aligned strategy. The final component, how will we implement our plan, addresses what potential actions you can take to implement the identified goals, and what are some of the immediate needs for communicating your strategy. Who needs to know what, by when, to what extent, in order to carry your plan forward. When it comes to strategic planning, a lot of institutions typically budget for 2 or 3 days to create a 3 year strategic plan, but they often fail to account for resourcing the 1,100 days of strategic work to actually implement. It's vital that you invest as much, if not more, resources in implementation to ensure successful execution and to sustain results. We recommend organizations focus on developing skills, processes, and systems within these 6 areas that will strengthen your capacities for strategy implementation. Alignment with your leadership team and with your campus community and throughout your strategic plan and the actionable work that supports it. Accountability, being clear on roles and responsibilities and having systems in place to drive accountability. Communication, which I'll actually talk more about in a moment. Tracking and monitoring and reporting, which is about developing a proactive method for documenting and monitoring your plan progress. Values, behaviors, and culture, which is all about fostering a campus culture rooted in a set of shared values and behaviors that are communicated, demonstrated, and reinforced by campus leaders. And then lastly, leadership and change management. In leading a strategic plan, you are in essence leading a change project. And leading successful change can be tricky, especially in a dynamic college environment. But if you outline clear mechanisms for change preparation and management and keep people and process at the forefront of your change management, you'll maintain buy-in and alignment to the changes that need to be driven. Okay, back to communication, because especially in a shared governance environment, it's something you really need to focus on both before and throughout your strategy implementation. And you probably need to focus on it twice as much as you think you do. So, will you do back-end stakeholder engagement? Many colleges and universities, once they've got their strategies written, will go back to the same stakeholders they engaged on the front end and pressure test what's been developed. They'll ask questions like, does this strategy make sense to you? Do you see yourselves in our strategy? What do you like about the strategy? What don't you like about the strategy? What concerns do you have? What challenges do you see? What questions do you have? And you engage them also in thoughtfulness around how do they see themselves taking action on this plan from where they sit. Asking key questions like this on the back end of strategy development can continue to keep your stakeholders in the loop and keep them authentically engaged in the process. And that can continue to provide you invaluable insights as you gear up to refine the plan you just designed and to then implement. Once your plan's finalized and ready for cascading, how will you cascade it? What will the structure look like? If this is an all university plan, how will you ensure that each department, program, function on campus knows what to do to drive strategic work forward? Will strategic initiatives be folded into current work plans? Will some strategic initiatives require new teams to be formed to do the work? How will you drive communication university wide so every group on campus aligns their work with your strategic plan? How will you ensure right actions are being planned and executed in support of the strategic plan? Cascading your plan effectively so the work gets done will definitely require some thought, planning, and coordination. And that should happen on the front end of the process. It's important to begin with the end in mind. And that brings us to another communication consideration, which is cadence. To effectively monitor, track, and iterate your plan, you need to build a structured cadence to support it. This may or may not be with your strategic planning committee, but the question is who is meeting regularly and in what cadence to discuss plan progress, to identify impacts and outcomes, to call out obstacles and identify roadblocks so that you can figure out how to navigate them. And who is communicating to keep an eye out on how the plan needs to be iterated, refined, updated, recommunicated as time goes on. These are all important factors for you to consider, especially as, again, you're likely in an environment of shared governance where ongoing communication and transparent communication is key. One last thing before we wrap up here, because as I said, you really want to start this process with the end in mind. Everything in this video should give you enough food for thought so you can begin sketching out what this process could look like for your college or university. And so here are 3 other things to think about specific to higher education. First, time and timing. This process could take you potentially an entire academic year to complete fully. Given that, look at your calendar. When do semesters start and end? When are there key breaks or events like spring break, midterms, finals, etc., that could detract attention, disrupt momentum, or just get in the way of your strategic planning? Are you a campus that can do this work over summer break? What would that look like? So think about the duration of the process as well as the time you can carve out to have the conversations you need to have and do the work you need to do to create an effective strategic plan, accounting for both stakeholder engagement and strategy implementation as well. The second piece is budget. In terms of budget, make sure you have a full understanding on the front end of what your guardrails are for spending. For most colleges and universities, procurements under $25,000 don't require competitive bids. For others, the limit's $10,000. Different institutions will have different limits, different requirements, whether you're a public or private institution, et cetera. And your finance department will help you understand which contracts can be direct awards and which ones need to go out for bid. So make sure you sit close to your finance team as you navigate planning this process. And then the last piece here is legal and governance requirements. So if you're a public institution, chances are there are some directives you need to consider in your strategic planning that are non-negotiable. So get clear about what those are. You don't want to be in violation of any of those requirements. And regardless of whether you're public or private, you might have campus entities like standing committees or unions with directives around strategic planning, such as who needs to be involved at which points in the process, or how stakeholder engagement needs to be conducted, or how meetings need to be run. So make sure that from the onset of this process, you've done your due diligence, and that you stay in communication with the necessary parties to ensure you're staying in compliance with all legal and governance guidelines. So there you have it, an overview of the whole strategic planning process for colleges and universities, from stakeholder engagement and governance considerations to the strategic planning process and one destination model to strategy implementation. This is not an easy process to plan for, and it's not an easy process to execute, especially from the inside. So there are countless benefits to bringing in an outside facilitator who you can trust to be your partner every step of the way. And that's exactly why we're here. If you've got questions after watching this video, or if you want to explore how we can work together to design and execute a robust, transparent, alignment-driven strategic planning process on your campus, drop us a line at info@smestrategy.net or visit us online at smestrategy.net.